Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of News Round for Anfield Index. It is, what are we? Wednesday, the 6th of August. Time is ticking. There's plenty coming up this week. There is the Community Shield. I keep saying Charity Shield on Sunday. There is moves, hopefully out, hopefully in. Yes, we are on the reliance of other clubs and their amateurish business, but there is development, and there was developments late last night. There was developments even this morning at the same time. So stuff is happening with Liverpool. I'm your normal host, Dave Davis, coming to you from, again, the sun is out in Edinburgh. It promises to be a glorious day. Fingers crossed, wherever you are in the world, it is exactly the same. And we'll almost do this, I suppose, in terms of, we'll talk about it in terms of order. We'll work our way backwards. So this morning, there was a Fabrizio Romano tweet that came out at 7 a.m. early on the dot. An exclusive, as it says there. Al Hilal are close to getting Darwin Nunez deal done after verbal agreement is in place with Liverpool. So Al Hilal have now got a deal in place with Liverpool. Club-to-club agreement is done as it says, while Al Hilal are in talks with Darwin over personal terms. The decision is up to Nunez, but talks are underway and Inzaghi wants him. I think this is massive. I really do. And I'm going to be honest, I'm going to be surprised if Darwin doesn't end up at Al Hilal now, because the fact they've got a verbal agreement in place with Liverpool is massive. There's a price point set. You think back to that multiple failed attempts by Napoli to try and get that deal done. There were suggestions they were, going to 40, 45, etc. No one will ever know the exact amounts. Not that anyone really cares anymore. Al Hilal's offer is going to be decent, isn't it? I suspect when it comes out, or if it does happen and we find the amount, we might be like, wow, they paid that for him. Which also then eliminates most other suitors, because we've heard about AC Milan being interested, but theirs is an apparent loan with an obligation. I mean, they're just spending money on a midfielder, the bit they've got. I think Jashiri, isn't it? It's coming in, the Swiss international. They're not going to be able to match that offer. And at the same time, mentioned it on the transfer show last night when me and Trev were talking, the suggestions are that the wages they're offering Darwin are half of what Al Hilal are rocking up to the table with. So we will see if anything develops on that. But the smart money says now, probably sometime this week, we'll hear something more on Darwin Nunez departing. And again, I know what everyone's thinking. Does this knock anything further forward for certain other players? But we'll get into that very, very shortly. So that was this morning, the latest news that is out. And late last night, now I've put this on the screen, but let me be deadly honest. The exclusive for this came from, as it says there, Transfermarkt, and specifically Manu Veth. So shout out to Manu for landing the exclusive on this. But it was tweeted, and I think probably got more attention, I understand. David Ornstein late last night when he tweets at, what time was it? There you go, 9:21 after a few edits. Red Bull Leipzig are speaking to Liverpool about a possible move for Harvey Elliott. The situation is at an early stage, but Red Bull Leipzig exploring and the clubs are talking. The 22-year-old midfielder is seen as a potential replacement for Xavi Simons. Now, as we mentioned many times on the transfer show, everyone's expecting it sort of a when, not if, but we're still waiting for it. Chelsea to make a move for Xavi Simons, although they're doing a lot of business on the outgoing side, aren't they, to maybe balance that all up. It's almost like the same money moving around in different places. But when Chelsea do that and are expected to move for Xavi Simons, Harvey Elliott would be a fantastic replacement for them, wouldn't he? The only thing that does interest me is he's talked about personally, and he said this himself, the World Cup. And Thomas Tuchel, because he's in his England shirt in that photo there, has mentioned that he wants players playing at a certain level. Now, Red Bull Leipzig are not in Europe this year, if anyone tracks the Bundesliga. So I do wonder, just personally, and I could be completely wrong on this, how that does track into it. So it'll be interesting to see. Now, this is the big thing that if you look at this snippet from the David Ornstein article, Liverpool placing a transfer valuation for the midfielder in excess of 40 million plus a buyback option, or above 50 million without one. Now, I am intrigued by that because if you look at, Red Bull Leipzig and the sort of transfer fees that they do pay, I think they did a deal that was around 50 million euros, I think it was, for Xavi Simons on a 2-year deal, knowing full well they were going to flip him, and it was going to depart eventually. I suspect they'd agree to the sell-on maybe because 40 million, but you can't see them going to 50 million, can you? And then the other one on the other side was, we mentioned on the transfer show, we know Spurs had made a serious inquiry because they're set to lose Son, and also James Maddison's got a serious injury at the same time. So will they be sprung into action by this? That is another one we've just got to keep an eye on. We will have to see what is going on there. Defensive news. I mean, we all want a centre-back, but nothing's really happening at the moment, is it? And Ed Aarons tweeted yesterday afternoon, you can see it on the screen, Crystal Palace are yet to receive offers for Mark Gay, who's said to be happy to stay at Selhurst Park and see out the final year of his contract. Liverpool are still thought to be his preferred option, but Newcastle could revive interest. Palace want 40 million quid. Now, I've said this absolutely multiple times, and the price tag has come down as a few have clocked. It seemed to be 50 million potentially, but I would just do it right now. Honestly, I know Liverpool, people will say free up the squad space and all the different things, which I understand as well, but I would just do this deal now, get it agreed. And yes, there's a Community Shield coming up on Sunday, which will feed into the mix at the same time. So we will have to see. But yeah, it is a strange one. The centre-back who we all want. We know that Canate game the game the other night, the double-header against Athletic Club. Canate was the only senior centre-back that played, wasn't it? There was Endo, there was Robertson, there was Trey Nyoni covering there as well. Liverpool need another centre-back in place as quickly as they can get one. Other moves have got to be done, but we will see. Now, it isn't just Mark Gay that should be on the radar being thought about. This is a little extract from Paul Joyce's article yesterday on, ultimately it was Rio and Gamo and other things, but Liverpool have been looking at a number of young centre-backs across Europe, including Parma's Giovanni Leone, if I'm pronouncing that right. While there remains an interest in Crystal Palace's Mark Gay. Should Palace agree to sell, then the asking price of the England international would be key, given he's entered the final year of his contract. Which does feel like, and we're saying this many times on the transfer show and other pods, the number for Mark Gay seems to have to start with a 3 for Liverpool to make a move. Yes, freeing up squad space and all that, but it would be, homegrown, so that would be a massive advantage at the same time. I hope this one gets done. Now, this is absolutely no disrespect to Giovanni Leone. I mean, most of us won't have seen the kid play. 18, nearly 19. Look at, last season, 1,199 minutes in Serie A. This is not being disrespectful, but we know Italian players don't really travel that well to the Premier League in recent times. There's a raft of evidence to prove that. We also think about, as much as we love the tune, Federico Chiesa and how that hasn't really worked out too well. So when you scroll down on FBref and have a look at Leone's stats, blocks in the 77th percentile, 1.5 per 90. Progressive passes received, but he is a centre-back and successful take-ons. Interceptions in the 57th percentile. It doesn't exactly scream wow, that's, unbelievable. And yes, he is 18. Yes, I've not seen him play, so others might have different opinions. But when I overlay him against someone like Coney De Winter, a more senior player who we mentioned on the transfer show we've been looking at, it is a bit of night and day, isn't it? So, there's just that to consider. I suppose it's always worth, as ever, looking at the aerial duel stats. 63%, not bad. Close to what Liverpool usually look at as an average, but again, maybe that's referencing a Jurgen Klopp-style centre-back. As we've said before, Arne Slot seems to want more ballers than that being the deal breaker. But 63%, when you're looking at nearly 30 aerial duels, isn't bad at all. And you can see a progression from last season when he was at Sampdoria. So that's there as well. When I look at his complete scouting report, there are a few what I would call green shoots. Maybe that, and not I'm talking shooting, different things. That's not what I'm talking about. But blocks, yeah, passes blocked, 81st percentile, which is really good. Again, if we're not going to have successful take-ons, that's not what we're really looking for. But yeah, what am I trying to say? I suppose you'll ask with this. What I'd say is that there's also a few good ones like passing, but Giovanni Leone coming in and going straight into that Liverpool team. Do we believe that? I don't. I don't think he's anywhere near ready to have a real impact on the first team. Yes, that is not diminishing his potential. That's not saying the kid could be a great player. But in contrast to someone like Mark Guéhi, who would put pressure on Konate and be there and potentially play different positions, you don't want to be negative about anything. But yeah, I think it's just a big question mark for me, realistically. Other news that came up, we're going back to Paul Joyce. This was an interesting one. As Tyler Morton leaves, and Tyler Morton did depart yesterday, didn't he? That was confirmed. The UK side, the Liverpool side, seems to be a £50 million fee to Lyon with a 20% sell-on clause. So those famous ones in there that Michael Edwards is famous for inserting. However, it's always important for balanced reporting to say Lyon, suggestion it's less, that it's a deal of 15 million euros. And I know which one I believe, just spelling out the facts. But as it says here in Paul Joyce's tweet, as Tyler Morton leaves, Trey Nyoni is now being considered as a full-time member of Liverpool's first team setup following a strong pre-season, which continued against Athletic Bilbao. Now, that is great to hear because Trey Nyoni has again impressed in pre-season. He does look to be a footballer of a bit like Ngamoa, real superstar potential for me. And you can say that's too much pressure. It's early doors. I would understand all that. But they are the two, aren't they, that you've got easily the highest hopes for that could make the level. Now, it's maybe just unfortunate for Trey Nyoni. Look at who he's up against. I mean, he's got McAllister, Bosley, Gravenberch, Curtis Jones being the squad option. I think, though, if you look at it, and we mentioned this on the transfer show, there is a real case to say Trey Nyoni is the fifth choice almost, the rotational option. Of course, I think in competitions like FA Cup, Carabao Cup, he's nailed on. Maybe a question is, and again, we alluded to this on the transfer show, is he ahead of Endo now in that pecking order? Does that have a knock-on impact there? Although, looking at centre-halves in that situation, Endo will argue, well, I'm probably the fourth choice centre-half right now, all things considered. And with Joe Gomez injured, I'm one injury away from being a starter. And you might need to rest players in certain competitions. So, yeah, does that affect where Endo goes? Also, the other question aside to that, how many minutes does Trey Nyoni get? That's probably the big question we've got over the two youngsters right now. They're clearly part of the first team setup, Rio Ngamoa, Trey Nyoni. How many minutes do you think they will get, though? That'll be one to keep an eye on. We'll be talking about that more in a few pods as well coming up. And I wanted to finish on this one because you think back to history. Think of someone like Christopher Columbus. He was mocked when he said the world was round. Think back to history. Thomas Edison was mocked when he recorded sound. The Wright brothers, they were laughed at. and look what place in history they had. And the man on the screen is in similar company, because Bayern Space was back the other day, a man who was mocked repeatedly by Bayern fans when he said Florian Wirtz is going to end up at Liverpool. It's all a nonsense from the Bayern side. And guess what? Everything that man said proved to be true. And this isn't a man who's, gone publicly, done pods, etc. But why am I talking about Bayern Space? Because I don't know if anyone's clocked this, but yesterday afternoon, he was talking about Luis Diaz. And it's worth reading this tweet. I'm not going to read it out, all of it, of course, but from inside Bayern, there is a quiet recognition that Luis Diaz transfer was orchestrated entirely on Liverpool's terms, with Bayern left to follow along. Richard Hughes controlled the negotiations from start to finish. Now, look at these few bits. Hughes quickly secured clear signals from the Diaz entourage that the player would be open to Saudi Arabia in the near future. So armed with that, Liverpool inserted on a significant sell-on clause that allows them to substantially benefit from any future transfer. Now, we didn't hear that in the reporting, did we? We heard, was it 65.5 million, as it translates from, I think, 75 million euros. But I'd love to know if this is true, because there could be a little booster coming. And if it's true, it's an absolute genius. Bayern Space also saying, actually, there's a base fee of 72 million euros with a further 9 million add-on. So 81 million euros is already being treated. Look how he puts it, as a formality. So it may even be higher, there's reporting. And the sell-on, look at that. Liverpool could receive money that may rise to 95 or 100 million euros. Yeah, of course, there is that statement. Inside Bayern, there is no denial of how the deal played out. Naturally, with no way of knowing if this is true, if this is definitive. However, you got to give something Bayern Space says credence. You have to, based on history. We'll see if anything comes out. Maybe we've got to wait a year or so. Who knows? But well worth mentioning based on everything else. But there we go, ladies and gents. It feels like we're awaiting departures, and someone's going to ask, what about the Isak situation? I mean, what about the Isak situation? Everyone now knows it is the worst kept secret that he wants to come. We're waiting for Newcastle to get forwards in. It looks like Benjamin Sesko, or Sheshko, for people who want to say it that way, is set to go to Manchester United. That is his preference. It looks like they're going to miss out on an 8th target that we know of this summer. In fact, I think if I was Newcastle, I would just move on quickly now and go for, Ollie Watkins, Ramos, one of the others, start working down that list and start working fast. But we'll have to wait and see. There's rumours, there was talks last night, wasn't there, that Isak will hand in a transfer request. Again, rumours and talks. We've not had it. And I think it's okay to say this. Something just needs to happen on that one, isn't it? Because it's all getting a little bit saga-ish, maybe a little bit dull, even the whole thing. Of course, it won't be if we do secure the player, but we just seem to have to be patient and sit tight on that one. But there you go. A Nunez deal, club to club. A German club speaking to Liverpool about Harvey Elliott. Exits galore. No movement, it seems, really, around Mark Gay. Giovanni Nyoni being mentioned as a potential one there as well. Trey Nyoni, is he now even further up the pecking order? All of this we're going to have to see, aren't we? There is plenty going on. It is Wednesday. Always worth remembering. Richard Hughes and Michael Edwards, they love a Friday, don't we? That will just be the one to keep an eye on. Is there any, or does it all build to a crescendo? Christ, if Newcastle are involved, you would not bet a single penny on it, though, the way things are going. We will have to see. But there we go, ladies and gents. Wednesday, the 6th of August. That was another news round for Anfield.